It's a great pleasure to be here. Today I'm going to talk about how to change a flat on a moving tire. It's not very different from switching from a monolith system to a service-oriented architecture at scale. So if you have scale, it is almost like that. Because this is not fun. And these guys also don't own the car. And they just don't have an option of, they've just been told the car shouldn't stop. It should continue to run at the same speed. But you have to change some components, in this case the wheels. And so I joined about a year and a half back, Nike. And then we were on Magento. We're still significantly on Magento, but it's more like 40%. But a lot of it has moved out to services. And we were in a situation where we just had to start fixing things along these lines, otherwise the business would have got stalled. Forget, slower growth. So I'm going to talk about, this is not a very technical talk that I planned, but please share your comments, ask me any questions. We can dig dive into any topic. We could dig dive into how it scales or how it scales out or technology choices or anything. But mostly I wanted to talk about my experiences and learnings over the years on how to do these projects. So I think some of the main questions are, when do you decide you should do it or not? So the main are the first two reasons, right? If your business is seeing major reliability, scalability, performance issues, which there's no way you can fix on the monolith, then you have to. That's a great call. That's a very compelling reason to use it. Second is code maintainability. Monolith can become very, very hard to maintain. And then of course cost can also be a significant reason, because a lot of times the only way to scale a monolith system is to scale up, put more hardware, more RAM, more CPU and all of that, right? And then those machines, those solutions become very expensive. The world is moving towards commodity hardware. And of course, if you have a lot of bandwidth, then maybe you should do something else with that too. When not to do it, I think if the business model is still being validated, you don't want to build a web services architecture at that time, because it just takes a lot of effort and it's an overkill. In fact, a monolith system is very quick to build features to adapt in the early days. And when I say early days, you could even be doing a few thousand orders a day. You'll still be fine. So my most of the current talk is based on the two recent experiences. One is with the two migrations that we've done. This has been live for about 6-8 months. The cart service and the cart rules, this is still under testing, and we'll get into what I mean by that. So these were the first two that we picked. The price and availability. So essentially we're an e-commerce company. We're a large e-commerce company at scale. Now Magento puts this limitation that we could do price changes only once a day, which is very, very limiting for business. Because you want to do sales in the middle of the day. You want to just change a price for some reason. There's been a pricing error. You want to change it. We could not do it, because to do the price change, you had to run what's called Magento indexing, which would kill the database, and then the site could have serious stability issues. The other thing was the availability, right? That's a quantity, how much you have in stock to sell. So that would not go to out of stock. So it would go to zero, but the system would not behave as though it's out of stock, and then you would see search results of things that are out of stock right on top. So you're losing precious eyeballs. So compelling reasons. Cart service, it was essentially it could take the load of very high traffic days. So let's say you have, so in e-commerce, a lot of traffic comes in the night, a lot of traffic comes when the sale starts the first day. That load, what do people do? A lot of people would have their carts kind of filled up, and they would come on the day of the morning of the 8 a.m. on the day the sale starts. They would all load up their carts. Everyone knows how to check out. So that system could not take that load. So we had to move that. In terms of technologies, basically Python, SQL for this, Java, Dynamo, H2. So for cart, obviously we had to do CRUD for both, but for cart we also had to do the cart rules engine. So a lot of these discounts, right, like Lakme is off 10%, it's just a cart rule. Or if you buy Lakme Birth, or if you buy the Nike brand Birth, $1,000, then you get something free. So these are all cart rules. And then we've used the in-memory database to implement those cart rules. And any guesses why people choose technologies? Why people choose different technologies? Are they best suited for that purpose, or?
So most of the time, that depends upon the team. How the team is well versed with the technology side itself. So, it's entirely depends upon a use case and how fast you can deliver. So if I have a team of people who are good with Python, so I would most likely go with Python, right? Provided that most of the languages which exist in the market today are similar in some way, right? So most of them do their job best, right? So it entirely depends upon the team things. Then you might have specific requirements wherein you want to go ahead with Go, or say instead of MySQL you might want to go with Oracle, or choose Postgres for that matter. So those choices come later, right? When you want to fine tune and you want to go at a scale. But initially people start with what they have best.
So that's a perfect answer. That's exactly what happened with us also. So we've moved many services out. There's a team in Bombay. There's a team in. So we have a dev center in Gurgaon also, and all the services done out of Bombay are in Python. All the ones in Delhi are in Java. DynamoDB was my idea because it scales really well. It's NoSQL. It's managed by Amazon. So we're going to move most of our NoSQL use cases to that. And then in-memory DB was my idea, but the team chose the exact implementation, which is fine. But yeah, exactly. That's what happens, and I think that's how it should happen. Because I think teams which are very small may say that, okay, let's just use one technology. But as we have a larger team, it's okay to have a couple, maybe three, but not more than three. So I think, so that's what it is. So let's jump into, I'm going to talk about two learnings. And again, just keep ask me questions, make comments, counterpoints. It's just, it'll be better if it's interactive. So first step is, these projects are very, very hard. They're very, very hard because they are unknown. What is unknown? You don't know what you'll encounter when you have to replace this component. Why? Because first of all, you don't know how the monolith system behaves. Typically, a monolith system exists because when the team started, they just got something ready-made. They probably did not. I'm not talking in general. The pattern is that they didn't have a strong tech team. They started Magento, and then they outsourced it. It was outsourced. Started with Magento, at some point brought it in, got some Magento developers, patchwork, things moved on, and then after a year or two, it's just nobody knows how to fix it. Lots of people have come, put some code, gone away. Nobody wants to remove any code because they don't know what will break. They just keep adding more and more in. So then you're at a situation where you're saying that, okay, I'm going to move price and availability out. Makes sense. Everybody buys it. When will it deliver? You don't know. You can't give an answer because you don't know how the existing system behaves. So you need the CEO's buy-in because otherwise you cannot earmark this team which is going to work on this hard project for a long time. And you're telling the CEO that, listen, I don't know when I will deliver this, but these will be the benefits. So it's a hard sell, but this has to be done, and it's the most critical part. Actually, the first 4 points are the most critical part in these projects. Second is you have to form the right team. And the main part of that is, you need a very strong architect who knows how this will work, make the blueprint. And kick-ass project lead, what I mean by that is, this guy needs to be like, he'll make everybody's life hell and make sure this launches as fast as it can. It won't cut anyone any slack. It won't be nice to anyone. Be nice to this team, but everybody else is gonna steamroll everything. And you need someone, in the end, you need someone who's very, very strong, very bold, who can disagree and who can make it happen. You can do without rockstar developers. I think that's a great thing. And I think there's a myth that only, there's a bit of this elitist thing in a lot of places that, only the best guys can work on the web service. I think that's not true. You just need smarts, you need dedicated people. They can be guided and you can do it. Of course, you need a cross-functional team. This is a very, This is a very important part. This is the reverse of what everyone likes to do. There's this tendency, I want to do everything. You don't want to do that. You want to negotiate. You want to make sure that, so we haven't put the Magento admins out because they work. So we've just left them there. You have to build a fortress for these missionaries. You have to give them, and these guys cannot talk about work-life balance in return. Because, look at this guy. And this is actually this is an analogy. This is an exact analogy because it's very hard. Even if they'll spend 3 weeks, sleepless nights, and then I'll go and tell them, guys, why is this not happening? And it's just very hard. I know that they're putting in their best efforts, but I think these 4 are the main things. If you get these, the rest of it is easier. So this is the top 4 points, which is this is not about making a perfect web service interface. It's not about it's more about moving out of monolith. Once you do that, then you can perfect your web service later. So, first things. Monolith system is accessing a database from 700 touch points, 800 touch points. What is your first step? First step is to define an interface. Refactor the existing monolith code. Implement that interface with this. And then move all the touch points to that implementation. This is a very, very hard part. And for this, you need people who really, really understand your Magento, Monolith, whatever it is, right? Your homegrown stack. And this is extremely painful. We had about 200 touch points for the cart functionality. You would think cart just has to be centralized code, right? You just view the cart and add, remove from cart, and that's it. But there's just so much. And then the way we want to test is for those tables, you just remove the DB access. Only the SDK should have access to those tables, so that any other code which is using the other common DB connection would fail. So then you test by just doing that. Then you implement the new service, whether it's on Dynamo, MySQL, Python, whatever it is, the new web service on the same interface. So now you have 2 implementations of the same interface, and all the code is working off that interface. So now is when you can switch new and old. And then a design constraint has to be that you will have to revert. So you're pointing to the existing implementation, and then you point to the new one. You have to assume things will go wrong, and you will come back. And when you come back, there will be no data loss. And you come back to the flat tire, because at least it runs. And then you go back to the new one, and then you come back. But it shouldn't be that you've lost cart data. let's say you switched 1% users to the new service, and then you said, okay, I know there's a bug, I'll fix it. So when you come back, those guys should not have lost their account data. This is what makes it very hard, because you have to make sure that you're doing things in parallel and in a performant way. And the way to do it is you need to implement mirroring at some level, either at varnish or in application code. So every time, so this is your usual code path, right? Your request comes in, it's going here, and it's doing what it has to do. But then you start sending mirror calls to the new interface also. You're not using this result, but you're still doing the mirror calls. And this is the only way to do performance testing. Because you will never have the same production stack to do performance testing. So doing performance testing is like a myth. It's just a sanity thing that, yeah, I've done these, I've tested these APIs and, it hits this, whatever, throughput or DPS and all that. Actually, it's a myth. You have to do it to find errors, concurrency errors and obvious scalability issues. Index is missing in the table and all that. But this is the only way to do performance testing. There's no other way. And then you switch, you make this an error observe mode, you switch, and then you generate logs and you keep comparing them. So this is a cycle of you switch to the new service, you compare these logs, and you make sure that there's no discrepancy. If there is, then you switch back, make that, you go back here, you fix that, you deploy it, observe mode, do this, switch it to this.
So, is only one of them doing the right operations?
Yeah. No.
What are you
No.
comparing? What is
Both are doing right operations, but this guy's doing it in MySQL, the Magento DB.
Sure.
This guy's doing it in Dynamo.
Oh.
But both are generating the logs of what they did or the state in the same format. And then there's another piece of code that's just testing these two logs. Yeah.
There are actually kind of a lot of proxies are available, like Vigour, which can actually help you simulate the production traffic, and you can do a one-one comparison. So it's just no varnish. So for example, probably they are using varnish because of they are heavily dependent on cache.
We're already on varnish, yeah.
Yeah. So but there are some other sophisticated tools like Vigour, which can let you record your access logs and can help you replay them in your whatever new infrastructure or architecture you want to play them on. And then you can certainly go ahead and compare the logs, compare the response time and all, and that's how you get to know.
But that replay is in real time or
Real time.
Real time, yeah. So it's just a rewrite rule here which mirrors the similar stuff. No questions so far, no comments, no questions.
But
It can only mean two things. Sorry, you were saying that?
yeah, I was saying, what matters at the end, right? So, for example, if you take your example of e-commerce, right? So you have a lot of notification services, which are supposed to send you notification or do the shipment. So whenever we are doing such mirroring thing, right? It is also important to understand that you are not duplicating the process.
Idempotent.
Yeah.
Wherever you have an idempotent thing, or you could do it. Or here, what we're doing is we're writing into different data storage, right? Basically, in Dynamo and MySQL, both are not being used in production. One is only being done to make sure things are being done right.
But how do you ensure that the other services which are dependent? So, for example, let's take your example for that case. I, as a customer, place an order, right? So those things comes to your original or primary setup.
So original records the order. Well, in this case, cart. Let's say add to cart. Add to cart request goes to two servers. One is the original Magento, but it also goes to this other server, which is Dynamo. And then when you read cart, it reads from both, it ignores this, it uses this. So essentially, you're using the other one in observe mode and you're ignoring what it does. The system is ignoring what it does. The only way we're building confidence in it is because both are generating logs and we are comparing offline. So there is no impact to the end user.
So basically, the other dependency services which are working there, they are working in a controlled way, where you can segregate between, what comes from which stack, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And if you have to send emails, let's say this was orders, right? We created an order and there was this parallel system being built. Then the parallel system would not send the mail, but it would write to a log file that I'm sending. You would just mock the
it's easy
mock
to
file
track.
that.
Yeah. Only one of them is sending out emails or notifications.
No, let this guy also pretend that he's sending out a mail with the content and everything, and let that also get reconciled. So, yeah.
And this also allows you to switch they keep switching between as and when you want.
100 times.
Yeah.
We've done it 100 times just for cart. Because every time we do this, we learn something, and then you flip back, and then you fix it. So that's the most important design constraint, that it has to be cross-compatible or backward
There's no
compatible.
migration.
There is no, it's just on. So that just requires a different sort of mindset.
So let's suppose you are migrating from Monolith to this microservice. So some data is already there in log file, right? So how you do migration? So how you do migration from microservice to Monolith?
First time user, right? So let's say I launched the service today. Let's say this was launched at 10 a.m. today, first time. So a user comes, says fetch cart. It goes to both. This guy will return empty, right? So then this guy will say, okay, it will return the request, the response, but it will then fetch the cart and send this guy a request saying create cart. So it catches up on the first read. So on the fly migration, the first time. Does that make sense?
It's complicated architecture like this because monolithic microservices both are working at the same time.
There isn't one answer. You could have multiple approaches.
Yes.
The problem is if you only have a batch mode thing, then whoever comes after the migration was run, his cart will be empty. So you would anyway need on the fly. So you need both, but we're just doing on the fly right now. It has to be risk-free. So the first time you enable it, you want to eat your own dog food. So we enabled it in Office. Yeah, our Office may. Anyway, people are just placing test orders. So there'll be some bug and then they'll say, okay, this doesn't work, and you'll fix it. It's like a sensible thing to do. Actually, even before that, I only told them to do it in the Gurgaon office because that's the team that's doing it. So no one can complain very loudly. So we do that, we iron it out, then we roll it out into all Mac offices. So this again, you can do it at the varnish level based on the office IPs. The original the request is from originating from the office IP. Then you make this guy. Sorry. If it's coming from the office IP, then you use this guy. If not, you use this guy. And the other is we're building some config into the apps, so that if you go and set that config, which will be a secret password, then it'll use this. Yeah. So we're investing in a framework that will allow you to do this, and many use cases.
Mobile apps.
Mobile apps, yeah. You go into settings and set some custom.
So proxy is there.
It's most likely the
Some app setting basically. So I say that if you're doing that, or you could do it for So there are two ways to do it, right? One is to do it in the application code. If you're doing it in application code, you can do anything. You can check whether the guy is from Nika.com, domain, or anything, right? Then you can do it. But if you want to do it at the infrastructure level, yeah, then you can just use it. Yeah. This is a very, very important point, and actually, people tend to not know unless you've done it. Even I didn't know. It's like, you guys moved houses, anyone recently? So, did you discover things you had in your house?
Yeah.
Like what? If you can share some.
I didn't know that I had so many books. Then I realized that I keep buying books, but I never read. Every time I'm making a trip, I'm just buying books.
Yeah. And the flight just gets over without.
Yeah.
So the books.
I mean, I recently found my. So I was doing a IoT project. So I just found a small device. I mean, it's actually identical to. I'm sorry, it's not on the top of my head. So I found it after.
Raspberry Pi.
Raspberry Pi is like the B series, right? I mean, that was one of the oldest series of, the first series in the market. So I did some home automation with that, and it was like ever since lying in my my drawers. So I recently found it.
Yeah, books are common thing, right? I found like Folly Van Damme, if you guys remember, graphics book, right? Atkins is my physics book from school, that vintage. But like, even something you're looking for since so long, basically you don't know the state of your state as a snapshot of your house today. If you think you know it, try and move houses, you would realize the diff, right? So in that way, so e-commerce is selling a lipstick, it has 17 shades, right? Business team is always asking for features and this, that, and the other. Common use case, you search for Lakme lipstick, you will see a Lakme lipstick. It has 17 shades, but you get one search result for that, right? Or if you're browsing it, what should be its price shown? There are 17 shades. There could be difference in prices of those shades. Let's say the price is from 101 rupee to 234 to 1017, right? When this result is shown, what should be its price?
The lowest one. The lowest.
Sorry?
The minimum one.
Cheapest. The other one could be
Most popular one.
show the most popular shade and then show its price. Another one could be show the maximum discount percentage, with the MRP, SP and all that, right? So we found out that there was no standardization. And then we spoke to the catalog team and they said, brand team tells me, brand team, 7 different brand managers, they're saying, oh, it's this, no, it's this, it's supposed to be this, oh, this guy sets it for the whole team. Nobody knew anything. So imagine such a core to a business, and then there was ambiguity. Basically, it was not a conscious decision what it should be. So we then built in 2 options. That when you're uploading a SKU, you can say show maximum discount percentage or cheapest. Right.
So why not make it dynamic based on the?
Sorry.
Why not make it dynamic choice, right? Based on the price or so popularity, right? Maximum discount. So if I see that this brand or this item is being sold for I'm asking about 2 other shades. This is the highest
Performing better.
Yeah.
So the most top selling variant. Yeah. So yeah, we can also do that. But what I'm highlighting is we discovered that nobody knew. It was by accident. It was just random what was showing up. That's what I'm highlighting. You're right. We can build that also. There were cases where it was not clear, like when you bundle products and you add them up. Then there were decimal points. So round up karna hai, round down karna hai, kya karna hai. And these are like very simple things to fix. But in cart, so that was price and availability. In cart, we realized that We're ready to go. We're launching it now. And there's so many discrepancies in there. I've deleted the details from here. So there's an item count mismatch. Those two log files, ran it for 10 hours. There's for 5-6% of the cases, there's a item count mismatch. Why? And these are not bugs, because the monolith system is failing in a lot of cases, because when the traffic's so high, the cart additions or removals are failing. But unless you're comparing, how do you find out? It's just obviously in the perfect world they're also failing because we do migration on the fly. That takes time. So if I do remove cart, then I find out that the new system does not have the cart. Then it will come back, read the cart. Then we'll replay remove cart. But the image that it got now, that item is already removed. So then it can't remove the cart, remove the thing. So, some of it is a result of the way the system is designed. Some of it is just errors which we didn't know, which were happening on Magento. And some of it were errors because there were bundled products for which Magento was showing the wrong item count. So we're good to go, but it's still showing 5 to 6% discrepancy in the logs. But you cannot take any risk unless you have very concrete answers. We have a very elaborate pie chart which shows all the reason for each, the size and reason of each discrepancy. Rounding off issues, GST, tax computation. Then there's another one which is interesting, which is if there's a cart rule, like at 500 rupees, give this thing free. Sometime it fire, so if your total is actually within 1 rupee of 500, 499 or 501, sometimes it fires, sometimes it doesn't fire, because there's a round up, round off issue in the current system. So, stuff like this is very hard to find out. Address issue, if you, in the current cart, you choose the address, shipping address, then you go and change the item, then Magento resets that address to your default address. So, stuff like this is, you can argue that QA should find it, but we're not living in a perfect world. So these are actually profound learnings. And these then you can go back and justify why also this project makes sense to you. So that's all I had, but I have two bonus things, which is you have to launch fast, otherwise you will fail. Because if you don't launch fast, then in the meantime you would have put in some features in the monolith.
Right.
And now you have to catch up. And then then every time you change something, all the testing goes for a toss. So you go back again. I know of cases, even companies I've been at, where tons of projects started, they were almost there, but they didn't launch. This is why you need that horrible, team lead, the project lead, who will make everybody's life hell and make sure it launches. So, and finally, this is a privilege. If you get a chance, you don't get a chance in a lot of places to do this at scale. Either the business is not doing well, or they don't want to invest in technology, or the guy doesn't get it, how to do it. It's a very unique, situation. So, if you get a chance, then I think you just have to grab it in both hands and give it all you have. So actually, that's all I had. And you have 10 minutes if there are questions or comments or anything. We go to someone disagrees also and has a point.
Sanjay spoke about some of the
if you break up the problem into, if you break up the problem, right, then basically, so if you break it out, right, there's the varnish stuff, that's all your infrastructure stuff, there's lots of stuff. So we're hosted on AWS. So there's a lot of stuff there happening. Monolith for us is PHP. So all this migration from so therefore the SDK on Monolith, right, has to be PHP. See, there's a whole bunch of client code, Magento code, which is PHP. You want to remove direct database access and move it to this SDK. So this SDK is nothing but refactoring the code that accesses the database. So this has to be PHP. There's no choice here. And so in this code part, there is no change in technology, because it's when it hits this, it's PHP, then it's this SDK is PHP, and then it hits this MySQL database. All of this is existing. We just sort of rehashed the code base here. Right? Now, this is where we have all the choice.
Right.
Varnish is also pre-existing, so we're not touching that. Another very important point is whenever you do a project in general, don't try to make the project scope bigger by also touching other areas. So just take this line and get out of there, and tomorrow you can come back and say, okay, now I'm going to replace Varnish with something else because it's much better. So this again, because we didn't touch. And because we were already on this, we just added the rewrite rules. And then for here, we had choices. We had language choices. It's a clean slate, right? So in the case of cart, I used Dynamo because one of the research paper that Amazon wrote, it's an Amazon service, they wrote is, they were motivated by the use case of the shopping cart for their own use, which is why they implemented DynamoDB. So basically, everything any e-commerce company does is to make that add to cart happen. Because after add to cart, you can only influence the guy so much to decide to proceed to checkout. And then it's just a payment thing, right? So, I mean, there's work there, but the whole company is working towards add to cart, right? So their logic was that they should never fail. Therefore, they built this very highly tolerant, available database. And like you guys will know, all performance issues always happen in the database anyway. So that's why we chose Dynamo. Then the other thing the team had done in the case of Cart has Cart CRUD, Dynamo takes care of it. But we also have Cart rules. And Cart rules are basically they had implemented it, and then I made them rewrite it. I was not part of the design because I wanted. Cart rule is, if you know what I'm talking about, like Lakme, lipsticks 10% off.
All the
There's LHS and RHS, right? LHS is the rule, RHS is the action. That if this matches, then do this. And essentially, all these rules are nothing but relational. It's a relational expression. It's a Boolean expression. Where the attributes are, cart attributes, product attributes, all that stuff, right? So I said, let's model this in SQL and let's use a in-memory DB for it. So that, because this is all transient, the rule computation, right? And then the team went and chose H5, which is an in-memory DB. And I was fine with that. So I didn't want to make the technology choices, but I want to make sure that, to your point, you can use any technology as long as it's mainstream. And if something else is already being used for that purpose in the system, then you want to use something else, then you just justify it. And the third is I don't want to use 3 for the same thing. It was okay. So that was it. But in general, I feel very comfortable with using multiple technologies. So I generally don't kind of.
But reusability takes a hit if you're using multiple stacks.
It's a tech management issue, which is why next time around if we have a use case for an in-memory DB, we will use H5. And if someone says that H5 is not good because of these reasons, I'm doing something else, then I'll make these guys also move to that. So that's why now that we have DynamoDB and there was investment, we have to learn. So now all NoSQL use cases will move to that.
So how does your two architecture compare now? Like for example, you've been running these two monolithic and the SOA architecture simultaneously, right? How does they compare in terms of performance?
Yeah, so like I said, the 5% difference we saw on the card, right? Zero errors in the new one. This we found because Magento is failing. So it's doing really good. Like 50, 20 millisecond response times as opposed to a second response time.
Excuse me.
Okay, last question. I have a flight to catch. I'm going to rush
So
out.
how much time did you actually took from moving to old Magento to new? So after deciding that yes, the new system is working fine, and you moved how much time did you find out that it's stable and it will be working fine? And on that same point, second question, after deciding that new system is working perfectly fine, if you find some big difference, like the stock is -100, +100 in both system, which will be more prioritized?
So that's a very, very good question. And this launch fast thing is actually not true for us because we ran. So your second question, that should never be the case. You should never find out that there's a big problem after you go live. It can still happen, and if it happens, I would fix the new system then because at some point I've made an irreversible switch.
Point of no return.
Right? So I'll give you that answer. We went live on the price and availability service, the new one, in, I would say, July. Today, I asked the tech lead that when are we telling the catalog team that it's okay not to update prices in Magento? Because those poor fellows are doing it 6 months later, 7 months later, even though we made that irreversible switch. And we've not seen a single issue. So we never saw a single issue since July. The reason we have not been able to switch is an unrelated reason. It's related but unrelated. It's unrelated to the functioning of the system. It's ran flawlessly. It is related because there are some reports that pull the price information from the Magento DB. Those reports are not migrated.
So we are still idling.
So that's why the guy still has to upload prices on Magento. So that's your second question, right? That's the answer to the first question. So the first question, we ran it for 3 months in parallel. And if we saw any issue, we fixed it. Then we gave it at least 2 weeks of seeing no issues. Like that. This guy, the compare for 2 weeks has to throw up nothing. Only then we will switch. And even when we switched, because we had the comfort of switching back anytime, we switched for 1% traffic and then 5%, we set cookies. So all of that stuff takes a lot of time. And a lot of companies are never able to make this transition. So actually I'm pretty proud that we were able to do it. And I think we were, this fast thing, a lot of things here are just fuzzy. But I think in 1 year we've built the team, we've done these 2 major transitions, and we've had 0 issues. And we've even enabled a flash sale, which is in the 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. You change prices of all the products and do it. So I think it's been fast. But had I gone and told my CEO that, listen, I'm going to take 7 months on this project and 4 guys are going to only be doing this, would have been a harder conversation. Okay, thanks everyone. I got to rush.